Crystal Charter, Daughter of the Red Seal. Chapter 20. Tap, tap, tap sounded gently on the door of Maebe's room. She assumed Elsie was coming to inform her that the bath was ready. Darkness lurked behind her curtains. She had slept from the afternoon to past dusk. Maebe scowled at the night, at its cyclical arrogance. I guess Elsie didn't want to wake me then, she thought. Come in, she called hoarsely. The light crystal beside her flared brighter when she placed a hand on it. 2 shining daggers were laid on the small table, waiting for her to decide where to put them. There was no need to hide them away from anyone anymore. Jorgen entered the room on his toes, silent as shadow. I'm terribly sorry for the intrusion, Miss Sumine. We wanted to let you rest after such a taxing day, but a message arrived, and I thought it best to bring it to you at once. His voice was almost a whisper, cutting through the silence of the house around them. Of course, Jorgen. I trust your opinion as to which messages are deemed important enough at this time. Someone from the Sumine 3. She held a tremoring hand up, waiting for him to cross the room and pass her a scroll. The shaking of her body reminded her that she hadn't eaten all day. Instead of a letter, a small red crystal appeared in the man's palm. The palace. Her voice cracked with realization. I'll leave you to read it in privacy. He placed it in her hands and left through the door. His absence made the large room unbearable, a feasting hall with no guests. Maebe held up the crystal, turning it over between her fingers and staring into the broken shades of red. You are strong enough to handle this, she reminded herself with a deep breath. With tired caution, she made her way out of her room, brushing her hand over the wall of light crystals to leave a dim glow waiting for her walk back. The finger-sized message shard gripped tight in one hand, with a crystal light attached to a short staff held aloft in the other. Soft scuffs of her slippered footsteps whispered around her as she tiptoed down the stairs of the hollow manor to her father's office. Her office. Melancholic curiosity possessed her at the bottom of the landing, and she diverted, heading in the opposite direction towards the drawing room. The door was closed. A sprig of white asphodel in the centre of a nettle wreath, held together by a string of pearls, was hanging from the handle. The maids had likely worked together to make it, to allow people to think twice before entering. With a touch of her pale fingers, the door creaked open. A gentle movement, to avoid being stung. The noise echoed through the hall and ran a nostalgic shiver up her spine. She didn't cross the threshold. Couldn't. Instead, she touched the crystal to increase the light and held it out in front of her. The glare reflected on the windows opposite and lit the room with harsh, angular shadows, dancing around as her hand moved. She winced at the brightness. Sudden panic flared in her blood as she heard a scuff of shoes. After a moment of hearing only her own heartbeat, she released a breath. Stop being so jumpy, she muttered to herself. It's just the wreath brushing against the wall as the door moved. One bookcase had been cleared of statuary and ornaments. The floor was bare of rugs, and 2 of the chairs were missing. Even from where she stood, she could tell the floor had been scrubbed to newness. Magic would have been used to remove any stains. It was a soulless evaluation she gave the room, an assessment. But she still couldn't convince herself to step inside until it was daytime. Sighing through her nose, she reached in to pull the door shut and headed back towards the office. Her father's globe cast starlight around the office, mesmerizing shapes of moving night sky. She rested her light on the desk and began to rummage for blank paper in the drawers. A list sent from the Artificer Guild quartermaster of requested items was left blank on the back, so Maebe let the crystal spill its contents out. Many condolences on the loss of Navarch Seldom Sumine, your father. I heard you arrived from Clest this morning. I hope you have used today to rest after your travels and have started to take any necessary arrangements. Tomorrow morning you are to attend the palace to discuss your journey to Camulus in order to collect the burden. Sumine 3 sets sail in 5 days, as scheduled. We must see to it that Navarch Seldom's funeral has taken place and that you are ready to assume control. How you wish to run the business of imports is at your discretion, as long as the burden is collected and safely in Elpis before the end of summer, annually. King Jasik, ruler of the Green Kingdom, protector of the swamp border and wall defender. The king had given her 5 days to bury her father and take up the role of Navarch of the Red Seal Fleet, to sign her name on the Red Seal contract. Steps in the hallway disturbed her from a dumbfounded shock. "Jorgen?" she questioned the air. "Hello?" Servants crept through the house at all hours, going about their tasks. No response. One of the guards trying to find the kitchen for a break, she willed. Logical reasoning ran through her head, but her heart pounded faster, knowing her father had been murdered. She picked up the light and headed for the door, leaving the paper out on the desk to deal with in the morning. Fear dominated rationality, leaving her with the sounds of blood pulsing in her ears as she peeked her head into the hallway. A white figure, dressed in a ghostly gown, stood a few paces down the hall. Maebe's heart pounded furiously on her ribcage, like it was trying to pummel its way out and abandon her to a bloody fate. The figure turned, doe-wide brown eyes looking terrified. "Sir," Maebe exhaled. "I heard a noise. It must have been you." She visibly relaxed upon seeing Maebe. Then, as if remembering the last time she saw Maebe, Certainly's back straightened, and she brushed her gown neater. A new type of anxiety controlled her. Maebe strolled past up the stairs, ignoring her again. She left Certainly to follow up behind her in the glow of her magic, or be left in the dark. The Crystal Charter, daughter of